Come on.
They're right there!
Let's go. Move, 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 move. This episode of Choices Not Chances podcast is sponsored by Louisiana Gun Shop, located on Highway 90 West in Broussard, Louisiana, just south of Lafayette. For more information, stay tuned at the end of this episode. This is Choices Not Chances podcast with Ryan and Matt. I'm your co-host, Matthew Schrett. Sitting next to me is Ryan Rogers. Ryan.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choices Not Chances. And just like every other time, if you see something in this episode that strikes you, moves you, touches you, something that you know needs to be shared out there, please just hit that share button and we'll grow together. Today I got a good guest for you. Lieutenant Colonel U.S. Marine Mike Allen joins the show. Mike and I met a couple of months ago at my brother and sister-in-law's house. They had a barbecue. We ended up talking. I'm talking about work, and he's talking about, upcoming work and upcoming plans of having an FFL license where he's going to start his own gun shop and things of that nature. And so we talked. The night goes by. We exchange information, and then the FFL came in. And so we're going to talk to him about what his plans are for 2024 coming up, and then and beyond that, we're going to talk about guns, gun availability, gun inventory. And it's, at least for the local communities, you're gonna want to watch this, because we can get guns going, and the extended community, because he has a website up. It's going to be great. So we're going to get into it. Mike Allen, thanks for joining the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate being here.
All right, so let's just like every other episode, I'm gonna start the same way. The first thing I want to know is, like, where do you come from? Who do you come from? Geographically, where do you come from? And then the family element, what does that look like?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I'm an only child. I was born in Hawaii. My mom and dad were both Marines. They spent about 4 years in and got out. Here I am 25 years later in the Marine Corps. So my dad likes to tell me that I took the family business and ran with it, right? Because we do come from an extensive background. My uncle was in Vietnam and unfortunately lost his life over there. So he was also a Marine, which motivated my dad to join. So, but when I was about 4 years old, I moved from Hawaii over to Houston, Texas. And then I lived there until I was 18 when I decided to finally join the Marine Corps. Like I said, I'm only child. Parents are retired now. They live in Florida. But overall, I think I just come from a humble background, trying to make life happen. And I had the opportunity to join the Marine Corps when I was 18 and jumped all over it. And it's been a great ride ever since. So,
all right, let's go back just a little bit. What did you do growing up? Team sports. You played team sports?
I did. I played a lot of Little League baseball, and then I also played football in junior high. But I broke my left wrist, and I never mentally recovered from that. You know what I mean? Like, after I broke the wrist, I played scared, right? And you can't play football scared. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid to admit that. It's just a fact of life that took me down a different path. Mm-hmm. Would have loved to, pursue professional sports, but I just never materialized for me. Yeah. Team sports, Little League baseball, a little bit of football, and then just kind of moved on from there and just kind of lived life as a regular average Joe, if you will.
Roger. And you said in Hawaii?
No, that was in Texas.
Oh, Texas.
Yeah, I moved from Hawaii when I was about 4 years old. We moved to Houston, Texas.
That's a big football state too, huh?
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's huge. Like sometimes I show the high school football stadium that we played at. My school played at, and people are like, wow, that almost looks like a professional stadium in some places. So, but yeah, really, really popular out there, and it's fun to get out there and watch high school football.
Oh yeah,
in Texas.
I still
really
like it. Drawing. Even here, it's not the same culture, but
yeah.
Going to any Friday night under the lights football game is always a good time.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I actually want to kind of get into coaching eventually one day. I coached. I did play football again as an adult a few years ago. I was down in Florida, stationed out there, and I played football. And once again, separated my shoulder, so it was like, all right,
like with the Marine Corps, or like intramural, or
let me wind that back. I did play with the Marine Corps unit when I was in Okinawa and injured my left knee. So are we starting to see a trend here?
A little bit of a pattern.
Yeah, we starting to see a pattern here. So injured my left knee, and then I played again on an adult football league. I think they call it like semi-pro, which is like, hey, you could get paid if you're good enough, maybe not, but it's basically just a bunch of adults getting together and playing football in an organized league. Yeah. And separated my shoulder, so obviously the football career was over, but I kind of got into coaching with the team. And then one of my mentors was a good coach and was teaching me how to run a defense. So I got liquored up on that and was like, hey, maybe it's a good idea to get back into coaching. So I wouldn't mind pursuing something like that at the high school level. And it's cool to hear all the collegiate stuff, right? They make good money. But I don't know if I'll ever make that level.
I mean, hey, dream big.
Right. No, you're right. That's a good point.
Stay after it. You never know. There's even some young professional football coaches now that are making millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like my age.
Right.
Coaching
Yeah.
this team. So it's not
They sure
impossible
are.
for sure. Okay, so only child, 4 years old and on, and you're in Texas. Do you hunt? Do you fish? Are you outdoorsy? Is any of that going on?
Yeah, not in Texas. We fished a little bit, but we kind of lived in a landlocked area in Houston. I mean, we had lakes around us, but they were about an hour to get there. So I did a little bit of fishing when I was younger. Now I do a lot more outdoorsy stuff. I do like to hunt. I get out there. I have a rifle for hunting, but I prefer the bow. I think that using a compound bow to me just level sets the playing field, right? It's hard. It's difficult. It's not easy to hunt with a bow.
Yeah.
But, I like it. So I want to get out there and challenge myself to do different things. And that's one of the things I do is, but I like to get out there as much as I can. Outdoors, you like to camp. I like to, hunt. Anything I can do outside is better than sitting inside all day, looking at a TV screen or whatever. So
Fact.
yeah.
But growing up,
Yeah, growing up
wasn't on the top of the it wasn't what you're doing.
No, because I mean, my parents, God bless them, they were trying to raise a family. They were working hard. They were, my dad was working 6 days a week. My mom was working 5 days a week. I'd hang out with her on the weekends while Dad was, his days off were typically during the week when I was in school. So we just didn't have a lot of opportunity to do a lot of outdoorsy stuff. I think the biggest thing we did was like go to professional sports. Growing up in Houston, I used to watch the Astros all the time. So we would go see them in live games at the Astrodome. Great memories there.
That's great.
So we used to do, a lot of professional sports.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Now, and so moving on, going through high school, you played some sports, but, not all the way through. You go to college after that?
No, I didn't. Like when I graduated high school, I was never ever going to do college ever again. I just wasn't. School wasn't for me. I graduated by the skin of my teeth, literally. So it was never going to be for me. But God bless the leaders I've had in the Marine Corps, because I do have college now, right? And that comes from just the great leadership that I've had over the last 25 years. I mean, I've been blessed to really work for some good, strong leaders that helped me understand the importance of a college education. So I applied myself, and now I've got 2 master's degrees. And I don't like to brag about myself. So every time I talk about myself, I feel like that's what I'm doing.
I hate doing it too.
I'm very humble about it, but through hard work, I got where I was at, and
Now, so kick that back for me.
Yeah.
Well, I want to understand chronologically. So you graduate high school, you enlist.
I did enlist.
So you're at Mustang.
Yes, absolutely. I came up. Yeah. So we'll wind it back to that. I ironically enough, I always wanted to kind of join the Army. I don't know why the Army wasn't
Be
in the
a rebel.
family. Yeah, I guess so. That's probably what it was. But I remember when I would go talk to the Army and in the lunchroom at the cafeteria at high school, they were just like, okay, we can do this for you. You want to be an MP? Good. We can start you on there. When are you ready? And I'm like, you're not really like selling me on it, dude. You're just like giving it to me. I talked to the Navy, the same thing. The Air Force was never around. And then when the Marine came, and I was like, hey, I want to be a Marine. And he looks at me and he's like, what makes you think you can be a Marine? And I'm like, okay, challenge accepted.
Challenged you, yeah.
And then that's when I fell in love with it. And then, I told my parents about it. Of course, they were nervous, as all parents are, but they looked at each other and said, hey, the Marine Corps was good for us. It's going to be good for him. And they let me join at 17. And a year later, I shipped off to boot camp. And hands down, best decision I ever made in my life, because it's just opened so many doors for me. I was probably borderline getting overweight at 18 years old, and it just put me on the right path. So I really thank the Marine Corps for the opportunity I've had and developing as a professional. I mean, I don't see that I would have ever gotten the type of leadership and mentorship I've gotten out of the Marine Corps as if I would have never joined. I just don't see that. Nobody would have touched my life the way that this organization has. So very thankful for that.
Best job I ever had.
Yeah, I think so. But all things come to an end, and I am going to retire soon, and it's time. You know what I mean? Like when it's time to move on, and it's time for me. So I'm looking forward to
let's
that
go
challenge.
back. I want to understand how we got to the time. So you enlist. What'd you enlist as, or like MOS wise?
Yeah, so I tried to come in as a military police officer. I saw my uncle in Chicago, who was a police officer when I was 4 years old. He turned on the flashing lights, and I fell in love immediately, right? Watched cops all growing up, right? I always wanted to do that. But I'm colorblind. So as I was coming in, the recruiter was like, yeah, you ain't going to be a military policeman, but what else do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe infantry? And he's like, well, I think secretly he made a promise to my parents that he would not let me become an 0311. So I didn't know they did that behind my back, but hey, all the better, I guess. But so he starts talking about logistics, and he's like telling me about these guys that wear red patches and they work under helicopters, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. So
Yeah.
I signed up as an 04 logistician, and ended up getting that very job. So I came in as an 0481, a landing support specialist, hanging out on the beach and under helicopters and at ports and airfields. And I mean, it's a blessing in disguise because I love that job. I loved every second of it, and I'm like, man, I have a real passion for this, and I didn't even know it. So mysterious things happens for a reason, I guess.
And so let's dive into that a little bit more, because like on the show, I usually am talking about infantry this, infantry that, SF. I don't understand a lot of, I guess, the other sides as intimately or deeply as I would want to. So you're an 04 logistician as you come in. What does that entail exactly?
Yeah, so for me specifically as a landing support specialist, like the infantry, let's say you're doing an amphib assault, you're coming off of an LCU and you're hitting the beach. Well, I'm the guy that's coming in right behind you and setting up the lines of communication so all the supplies can come to the beach. We're going to organize it. We're going to move it forward to continue to sustain that fight as you move forward. Yeah. That's the biggest. That's the best, biggest way.
Okay.
Check.
So, no, not that's easy, but it's easy for me to register. Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, so you do that for a number, like an enlistment or two?
So I did that. Well, 98 I came in to 2001. I did it till I was about a corporal, and I always wanted to be a drill instructor. Right? I fell in love with the drill instructor. I fell in love with that, just the lifestyle, the regimented lifestyle, being in recruit training. It was like, wow, that. I just for whatever reason, it just really resonated with me. So I always wanted to be a drill instructor because I felt like if I became a drill instructor, I could give back to the Marine Corps what was given to me. I'm sitting in my the office one day, and I hear my staff sergeant talking to somebody. I don't know who it is. And as all Lance Corporals do, right? We listen to our boss talk because we're nosy. And
got to feed that underground, boy.
Yeah, exactly. Got to keep it alive. But he says, I got a guy coming to you. He needs to go on Marine security guard duty. I need you to help him out. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Who's he talking about? And then
talking about you.
And he was. He hung up the phone. He looks at me and says, Alan, I want you to go to the career planner and put in a package for MSG duty. And I'm like, well, Staff Sergeant, I don't want to be a Marine security guard. I want to be a drill instructor. And he's like, I didn't ask. I'm like, aye. So I got up and left and applied. And it came back declined at first. And then I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. And then out of the blue, about 3 months later, I had orders to Marine Security Guard School. So I think, some people were looking out for me early on and said, hey, remember we talked about this? And I got to go to Marine Security Guard School and successfully passed the schoolhouse and ended up going to Kuwait City, Kuwait, and Moscow, Russia, where I served as a Marine Security Guard.
Now let's get into that, because that is something on my list that it was one of those things that I was like, I'll do that. I'll get to that.
Yeah.
And then things happen, career cut a little bit short, never got to actually do it. And another thing on that list is a MEU, by the way. Never got to do that. And now I'm like, because all my buddies talk about the times they had. Anyways, so tell me about first let's talk about Kuwait City, and then let's talk about them separately, because I have a feeling they're different. Yeah. As far as your job is concerned,
the duty in and of itself is the same, but obviously the location is different.
Check. Different. So start with Kuwait or school. Tell me about what that school is like.
Yeah. So I think the school environment is very like I don't know. I guess the best advice I got was keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. Mm-hmm. Right. And whenever cooperate and graduate, right? But I mean, obviously, you don't want to just cooperate and graduate. You want to take in what you're learning, and then. But at the end of the day, what they were really saying was, don't ruffle the feathers. Like you're in a fishbowl environment. They're observing how you act and how you interact, right? Mm-hmm. And it's for me. I was, like I said before, I was always the regimented lifestyle of the recruit depot really resonated with me. So I kind of use that to my that's the leadership style I started molding into when I was a young corporal when I went to MSG school. So Lance corporals, hey, they talk to corporals at parade rest and they show their respect, right? That's what we do. But MSG school, MSG duty, that's not really what they're looking for, because you're going to go out on a program with like anywhere from 5 to 20 Marines, and if you can't get along with those guys, they want to see that in school. They want to know that you're kind of a social outcast in school before they're going to send you out there and let a problem happen on post,
check.
right?
Yeah.
So I remember I was talking to a Lance corporal, and I chewed him out in the middle of the hallway, and I walked away, and one of the sergeants walked up to me, and he's like, hey, you probably want to readdress your approach to how you deal with people. He tells me, they're not really looking for that here. You might not be successful if that's what you want. And I took a look at myself in the mirror and I said, what's more important to me? Do I want to be a Marine security guard? I've got this awesome opportunity, and I want the experience. So I toned things back a lot, and then just kind of learn how to be myself, I guess, if you will. Not trying to be something that I think I should be, but be myself. So graduated through school. It's very detail oriented. Having that little leadership moment was eye-opening, because when you get to post, it's the same way. I learned how to lead with this and not with my collar on Marine security guard duty, and that is a lifelong
huge lesson,
right? Yeah, because you got before I get too far ahead of myself, but in Moscow there were 21 sergeants. You can't tell a sergeant take out the trash. You just can't, right? So it's like, how do you work with those people? How do you work with your peers to be that natural leader and to build yourself up to it? So, Schoolhouse, they do like it's not really a hell week, if you will, but it's fast, it's intense. You're going to do a lot of you're studying all the time. You don't get a lot of free time to yourself. I remember instead of going to chow hall, I was eating Lunchables in the barracks while I was studying, because it was so important to go to post. So I wanted to be successful in that endeavor. The deck commanders we went through with staff NCOs, they did not sleep. They just didn't, and they used to make fun of us, saying, "No, you guys smell like sleep," because they would go to class all day and then they would study all night. We would do the same thing, but they were actually standing post, right? Because embassy school looks a lot like an embassy. It looks like you're walking into an embassy.
So and where's that at?
It's in Quantico, Virginia.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so so the deck commanders kind of go through it like as if they're really staying in post, and it gives them an opportunity to find out what we're going to be doing when we're actually on the program, because they don't stay in post. They're more working with the ambassador.
Y'all do.
Yeah, we do all the watch standings. So pretty intense. I just remember back then I had bounced a check when I was a young Lance Corporal, and no issues, right? I was like, oops, okay, so need to do a little bit more, focus on the finances. So then you have to they ask you, have you ever done anything, right? So I was like, yeah, I bounced a check. Well, you go in front of, there's a master gunnery sergeant, there's a major, there's a sergeant major, and there's a psychologist all in the room, and it's kind of like a board.
Yeah.
And, it was like talking guns. As soon as I said I had bounced a check, the sergeant major and the master gunny just unloaded on me. Oh, you're immature. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. We can't trust you on post. You're going to be stealing money. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So I'm thinking I'm getting dropped, right? So I stood my ground, and I just said, gentlemen, at the end of the day, the major says to me, what do you think about what they have to say? And I said, well, they don't know me from Jack from Joe, but they're wrong. They don't know what kind of Marine I am, and you can't judge me in 4 weeks of MSG school. I hear what they have to say about bouncing a check. I learned a very important lesson. But if you think that I'm that kind of a person, you're wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about. And I wasn't disrespectful, but I was going to speak my mind, thinking that, hey, I was done. I was going to go back to my unit and not graduate. So I was floored whenever the major said, well, it's, the recommendation of this board, you be retained, finish training, and go to post. And I'm like, oh, my gosh.
Just another test?
Probably just another test. That could have been. Who knows, right? But
or not. Yeah,
because I was told afterwards, hey, you probably shouldn't be that pointed with a sergeant major and a master gunny. And I'm like, I wasn't disrespectful, because if I was, then I'd be standing in front of the man for NJP. Mm-hmm. But, hey, I spoke my mind, and that, hey, I know what I'm capable of. And if you think that that's indicative of who I am as a Marine, then you're dead wrong. Mm-hmm. And I felt confident to say that.
Sometimes you have to do that.
No, you do. Yeah, you do.
I know it doesn't make people feel very good, and a lot of people get their feathers all in a bunch, but it's like, no, sometimes it's necessary.
But you know what? Lifelong lesson from that, and I just realized it just helped me understand that, because I've never been that guy since learning the lesson from that sergeant. I've never been that guy that wasn't willing to listen to my people and let them speak their mind. You know what I mean? Because it's like, hey, if you got something to say, say it. I'm a grown man. You're a grown man. Let's talk about it. Let's solve the problem and move on with our resolution. I mean, fast forward a couple of years, I was on a ship and I had a gunny cussing me out in the middle of the well deck. Sir, I'm doing this. You're doing that. Get out of here. You're in my way. And I'm like, all right, brother, no problem. So that's what I did. I got out of his way, let the gunny be the gunny, right? And then afterwards, he talked about it. He comes up to me. He's like, hey, sir, I really want to apologize. Heat of the moment, I was stressed out. I'm like, hey, look, gunny, if we got issues, we can solve them. You don't need to be, parade rest while you're talking to me. If I'm in your way, tell me. I have no problem getting out of your way. So, you just apply these life lessons over time, and it just resonates, I think, as you talk about leadership and how you develop your leadership skills throughout your life. So, interesting altogether.
What's after that?
So after school we went to Kuwait. Kuwait was a pretty cool experience. It was Bravo Company, and Bravo Company. Look.
Was that the hottest place you'd ever been?
What do you mean hot? Like combat wise or
temperature?
Hot? Temperature wise. Oh yeah, it was ridiculous.
Stupid,
it was absolutely ridiculous. And I wanted to go out there because I was wanting to get into it. Right. I didn't go on a Marine security guard duty.
What
to
year?
Stay on duty. 2001,
2002
was this time frame.
Before 9/11?
Yes, so it was actually like I was there when 9/11 happened, and I'll that very interesting story. We'll certainly get into that, but I just I wanted to go to the Middle East because I wanted to go to Yemen. That was where I was hoping to go, but I ended up getting Kuwait City, Kuwait. All you could request was the company. You couldn't request a location.
Why Yemen? Why'd you want to go there?
Because I thought something was going to happen there. I wanted to get into a fight. I wanted. Hey, I've been through this training. Let's put it to the test. Right. Let's do it.
Check.
But it ended up, nothing happened in Yemen when I was there. And I remember 9/11 happened, right? You asked the question, and I'm in the Marine house changing over because I'm about to go on post. And all of a sudden the deck commander calls everybody, and he's like, everybody get to my office now. And, what am I thinking as the young, tired watchstander who's not getting enough sleep, right? What the hell does he want now, man? What does Gunny want now? We walked in there, and he's like, hey, look, guys, some plane just flew into one of the towers, and we're sitting there watching it, and we saw the second one fly into the tower. We're like, whoa, what is going on here? And then as I was on post, I immediately took post after that, and we immediately, all the Marines were searching around the entire embassy compound to see if we could find anything, and nothing happened in Kuwait. Nothing was there. And then that night, I remember I was on post one when President Bush addressed the nation, and they put me on speakerphone so I could hear what he had to say. And pretty moving experience to actually be like there for 9/11. A lot of flowers at the embassy the next day. A lot of the community support for the United States there in Kuwait was very heavy, and it was pretty cool. I remember I took pictures of it, and I still have it in my little photo album of all those experiences. But
that's cool.
very very unique overall. But Kuwait was quiet. I mean, nothing crazy happened in Kuwait when I was there. I think one time I had.
No, like what's your day to day though? Now you're there, you're post.
So that's all you do, right? We had two posts at Kuwait. We had post one, and post one you're in your deltas, right? You're sitting there, you're checking badges, open up the door so people can come and go where they belong. You're also kind of there watching the consular section, because the consular section is where really the average civilian will come in looking for a visa to the United States, and they'll go sit in there. So if something's going to happen, it's probably going to be there because people are on the actual compound.
Are you armed in deltas?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You got a 9mm, and then we've got shotguns sitting behind the post. And we had when I was on Marine Security Guard duty, we kept the weapon on fire. So the pistol we had was on fire. And I remember the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, McMichael at the time, came and visited us. And he was like, hey, you are the only Marines that stand every day with your weapon on fire. How does that feel? And I'm like, well, I never really thought about that. I'm like, it feels normal to me because how I was trained. This is what right looks like. So we just did it. But about halfway through my tour in Kuwait, a new policy came out to where we kept the weapon on safe. So now it's like when you meet old watchstanders, it's like, yeah, remember we used to keep the weapon on fire. What are they doing these days? These young kids have no idea. You know what I mean? It's old.
It's so green.
It's new core, right? So
they're so soft keeping their weapons on safe.
Right, exactly. So yeah, day to day.
It probably came right after like like the 100th ND since the war started.
There definitely were negligent discharges.
Yeah, they were like, "Fuck this! Call the embassies. We're not even getting in a crisis over there. We got too much going on.
Yeah,
Safety all weapons."
Yeah, that's funny. But yeah. So the normal day, I mean, you would just it was weird, right? So you're just standing guard duty at the embassy, and guard duty, it becomes taxing on you because you have a security mindset, right? But not everybody looks at the world through security, right? So there's you see things that other people don't. It becomes exhaustive. When we look, Marines are Marines, right? We used to have shenanigans playing with the local guards that were Kuwaitis, and they had a gate out the back, and we used to open it, and they would open it so they could bring a vehicle in, and then we'd close it halfway through, and they'd be waving at the cameras. Sorry to be picking on the local guards, but it was funny. It was amusing for a couple of sergeants sitting on post 1 laughing about it. But, Marines being Marines, I guess.
What was the funniest thing that happened there?
Well, I think hands down the funniest thing that happened out there was kind of an inadvertent react drill, right? And you don't want to. So a react drill is if something happens in the embassy, alarms go off, and the Marines come in from the Marine house, we gear up, and then we go solve the problem, right? It's immediate crisis response force. Well, while we were there, the second post 2 was out roving around and checking the different alarm systems, make sure everything would work. Well, he flips on the select tone for the duck and cover alarm at the front post, but that alarm doesn't go off out there in the post, so he doesn't know what's going off in the embassy. And he doesn't know that's going off in the ambassador's residence, which is right there. So at Marines being Marines, this is where it gets a little iffy, right? Because you would expect a professional, crisp response. That's not what the embassy got. What the embassy got was the Marine on post 1 freaked out, and if you key the mic, the alarm stops. So he keyed the mic, and someone was in the back, and he came running up, and he's like, "Hey, man, what the hell's going on?" Right? The mic's hot. So the whole embassy is hearing this conversation. "I don't know, man. Listen to this." He lifts it up, and then the alarm goes off again. Then he pushes it down. He's like, "What the hell do I do, man?" So everybody's like, "Oh my gosh!" Post 2 finally comes back up, and he's like, "What's going on, guys?" And everybody's hearing this conversation. "Look at this! What's going on?" And he realizes what he did, so he runs back out there and flips the switch to turn it off, and then we just make the announcement, "Hey, apologize for that." So that was in Kuwait. There's another. I have a funny story when I was in Moscow, but yeah. So as we talk about the day to day, you just kind of do your roves around the embassy compound, just doing your typical security work, right? You're
now you guys getting like an intelligence report each morning, or
so
each
so
week,
we do.
or?
So yeah, the CIA's there, right? They're that's not secret. Everybody knows that's where they hang out at the embassies, and they give us some intel reports but typically we get from the regional security officer who works for the Department of State, because Marine security guards are actually operationally assigned to the Department of State, and they're administratively assigned to the Marine Corps out there. So the RSO would come out and tell us, "Hey, these are local threats that we're seeing. These are some issues and events you need to worry about." Moscow was where we really got the intelligence, because the Cold War is not over. It was not over when I was there in 2000, from about 2002 to 2005. And it was just the same level of shenanigans. The Russians didn't know what to look for, so they were looking for everything. Mm-hmm. And obviously we didn't have the threat of an all-out nuclear war like we did during the height of the Cold War. But from an intelligence gathering perspective, it was still the same old shenanigans they've been up to for forever, pretty much. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else? I don't know. Super hot in Kuwait. Very hot temperature-wise. The ambassador used to order blocks of ice to put in his pool just to cool it down. I mean, that's how hot it was. It was, 54 degrees. I think that's Celsius, though, which is almost like 110, 115 up there somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Don't math in public. I don't hope your viewers aren't like Googling that right now. But
it was in the 100s, probably 10, 15, 20. 120. I mean, that was one of the hottest places I've ever been.
Yeah.
And then you go from that det to Moscow?
I did Moscow.
So that's like hot to cold.
Yeah, extreme. Yeah, it was snowing in the middle of July.
Yeah.
Snowing in the middle of July in Moscow. That's crazy. So
coming from Kuwait, that blows, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, it was
like
good, though.
Culture shock?
It was a culture shock, but so what we do on Marine Security Guard duty, they have something called a designated country, high intelligence threat. They're going to put the best and the brightest and the most mature out there. That's not me being egotistical. You can go to that's exactly what they do. If you're a top-notch performer, then they're going to send you to a DC post. So my deck commander came to me and said, "Would you like a DC post?" And one of the guys that had just got to Kuwait right before I left had done a tour in Moscow, and he spoke highly of it. and I knew the debt was a few Marines short, and I thought my chances were high of getting it. And I said, yeah, I'll take a DC post. And he said, okay, you could end up in Cuba. And Cuba's a no-frat post, so you can't leave the compound. And I was like, I'll roll the dice. And luckily, I got Moscow. So it was a good experience. It was just cool to be in Moscow, Russia. But yeah, I remember sitting on post 5 is where one of the posts that we sit at. And I remember sitting there, and my buddy was like, look at that camera right there. It was one of the cameras on top of the embassy, and there was little snow flurries. I mean, it wasn't sticking. You couldn't see on the ground, but middle of July, snow flurries. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Moscow was a really cool location to be. We definitely got to talk to a lot of we definitely got intelligence reports from the CIA telling us, hey, look, just, I mean, a lot of cloak and dagger stuff, right? The chief of station in Moscow would talk to, the intelligence services in Russia. He would talk to his counterpart direct, face to face. And he would tell him, hey, stay away from the Marines. We don't let them know anything, right? I don't know if you know, but back in the 80s, they had Clayton Lone Tree, who had, he was a Marine security guard. He had dated one of the Russian citizens there, which was forbidden at the time. You could not fraternize with any Russian citizens.
Like you get in trouble from the Marine Corps?
Oh yeah.
And Russia, I assume?
Well, not necessarily Russia. Russia would certainly like you to date one of their citizens, right? Because everybody that works in the embassy, hey, they're a spy, right? That Russia knows what they're doing, right? So. He ended up talking. He met her uncle called Uncle Sasha, and Uncle Sasha was a KGB agent and had recruited him, and he was giving him information on who the CIA agents were. They flipped a security guard. Yeah. So so they know exactly what they're doing down there from that perspective. So that's Sergeant Clayton Lone Tree. He's a legend in the in MSG duty, and the fact that. Don't be a lone tree, right? So, so Moscow was cool because it had that mystique. When I was there, we were allowed to fraternize. We just had to be able to, if you met somebody like 3 or more times, you had to show them a passport. You had to get their passport so that way you could turn into your regional security officer. This is who I see on a regular basis. That way they knew who you were affiliating with, and if there was any intelligence threats emanating from that person, they could get ahead of it before it became a problem. And we did actually have one issue where 2 of the Marines that I was on post with, they were kind of engaging in some black market stuff that was going on with some of the local people. They didn't realize it until they were kind of in over their head, and they were like, hey, they went to the RSO and said, hey, we've been doing this. And they were like, yeah, you're about to get flipped. So they ended up, they got a soft relief. They got to stay on the program, but they had to go to a different post. They had to leave Moscow immediately. So
they didn't even realize that's what was happening to themselves.
They didn't, because they thought they were hanging out with a friend, right? And what ended up happening is what he was doing was, we had some of the shops in the embassy. You could get stuff like duty free because you were working there, but the Russian citizens couldn't buy it. So he would be like, hey man, can I get some soap? Yeah, we'll get you some soap, just innocent stuff, right? And then he's like, yeah, I'll pay you for it, no problem. And over time, they were selling him more and more stuff. They would go buy it from like the PX, right? And then they would sell it to him, and he started giving them crisp $100 bills, right? And they're like, oh, this is good money. And then after a while, they realized, hey, we're probably doing something we shouldn't be doing. And they reported it. They self-reported it, and they were like, yeah, you got to go, because this is certainly blackmail. You're definitely breaking the rules here by doing this, and you got to move on. So
even though they felt in the beginning like they were just trying to help somebody,
they were just thought they were hooking up a friend, right? But I don't want to. Yeah, no, it is. It's exactly how it started. It's kind of how it started with when we circle back to Lone Tree, he was just dating this girl, and she's like, meet my uncle, and there's books on it out there. I can't remember the names of them, but I've read them. It's just fascinating stuff. But
now where's he?
I have no idea. Lone Tree's long gone now. I mean, I think he did some time in prison, and then once he got done with that, he's kind of moved on with his life. But you can certainly Google. Yeah, you can certainly Google some things that he went through.
That's wild.
But I think absolutely. He's absolutely taught. When I was in MSG school, we actually did like they taught us about him, and we learned about him. And it's like, okay, copy. It just helps you realize, hey, dude, stuff's real. Like, don't think that. Don't be naive about what you're doing. You're working with classified information. We have top secret clearances. We don't necessarily work with it, but we get them because we have to go look for it, right? One of our duties, you asked me earlier what my day-to-day looks like. At night, we go through and we rummage through people's offices. We're looking for unsecured classified information.
Oh, wow.
And if we find it becomes an incident that we report to the RSO, and the RSO addresses that with the person that committed the infraction. If they commit too many infractions, they'll ship them back home to the United States. So we get paid to snoop. And, when we're taught how to snoop, we're taught how to read, typewriter ribbons. We're taught how to read things and determine if something's classified. So it's pretty cool training that we get. And because we have access to those types of things, that's why we have the top secret clearance. We're not in there we're not doing the top secret war plans. You know what I mean? Anything like that. But gives you a good idea. So
be super cool if we could just get a whole element of those guys and put them in DC.
Yeah.
And let them just snoop through everybody's offices.
We actually, in school,
be super cool.
We actually go through. There's a week before we graduate that we actually get to do that. We go out to some of the DC offices and we get to rummage through some of the Department of State stuff. So they actually do it as a practical application.
Well, what if you find shit?
Yeah, that's an incident. We have an RSO type guy that works with us, and we go through, and anything we find, we bring to his attention, and he adjudicates on the spot. Yep, that's an infraction, and we write it up just like we would on post. So really, they teach us, then we go out and do it real.
I bet when they hear the Marines are coming for their prac out day, people are shitting over there, bro.
Yeah, they're making fun of each other, right? Like, oh my gosh,
you better go clean your office.
Right? Exactly.
They look at it like a. Like when you got a hot room in field days. Yeah, the field days inspector's like 6 rooms down.
Yeah, that's funny. But
that's wild.
So Moscow was cool because we did a real react.
And you were single this whole time, yeah?
Oh yeah. You got to be single on Marine security guard duty to be a watchstander. You can be married as a deck commander.
Mm-hmm.
You can get married like on your last couple of months on post if you happen to fall in love out there, and but you have to request permission from the battalion, and the battalion commander will approve it. Battalion commander is a colonel, so not your typical construct. It's a full-board colonel, vice lieutenant colonel,
Gotcha.
Which is usually your battalion commander. But so he can give you permission to get married out there.
Or can he give you permission not to?
Oh well, I think the permission not to get married is standing, but yeah, he can deny it. He can say no, you can't get married.
Have you seen that before?
No, I don't ever think I ever saw it because I think it gets sniffed out. Like if you're a first poster and you want to get married, they're not even going to run it up. They're just going to tell you.
We're not doing marriages this week.
Yeah, exactly. You better be on your way off the program to get married. And I had
hit him with a Joe Right.
Yeah. And I had a few friends that did as they were getting off, they got married. So it's possible out there, but.
I guess it really depends on what duty station you got for that, eh?
Yeah. And then I think the big thing is, because we asked, and they're honest, they're like, look, we're not going to let you get married because you live in the Marine house. If you got married, we'd have to give you housing.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to give you housing for that. So that's not what MSG duty's for. So we don't have it's like if you get married and move on base, you live in base housing. They don't have that capability in the
Right,
so,
yeah.
It just made sense. But one of the coolest things, when you talk about being funny, right? So the funniest thing I did in Moscow was we used to have to make an announcement every night, letting everybody know that, hey, if you're going to be working after hours, you have to have a chit signed by your boss. You have to turn it into the Marines on post, so that way when the rover's going around looking for people, if we find you, you have to give us the chit, and then we'll call into the post 5 and say, hey, I got a chit here. Yep, yeah, they're good, and we'll let you continue to work because your supervisor approved that. So I get on the select tone, and I'm like, attention in the embassy. I sound all professional, and I was like, 10, the time on deck, and I just went after it all motivated, and the RSO came down, and he was like, dude, that is the best, most enthusiastic announcement I've ever heard. And I'm like, yeah, right on. Well, the deck commander I had he was a drill instructor through and through, and that was his leadership style, right? He would melt your face off in a heartbeat. So he came up to me the next morning. He's like, hey. I'm like, what's going on, Gunny? And he's like, yeah, I heard you had a pretty motivating announcement last night. And I was laughing. I'm like, yes, Gunny, I did. And he's like, yeah, let's keep that to a minimum. I'm like, Roger. I'm like, Roger that, Gunny. I'm like, hey, just so you know, I didn't say anything unprofessional. I just was very enthusiastic with it. He goes, I got it, but cut it out. I'm like, all right, cool.
Somebody didn't like
yeah,
it.
but you know, I got to think that in his heart of hearts, he was laughing behind closed doors, like, look at this jackass.
Yeah.
You know, being a Marine, right? So we always laugh about Marines being Marines. So
Yeah.
and then the other cool thing, I mean, so we talk about like, you know, the Cold War not being over. We actually we had a real world react that I got to be a part of right before I moved off the program and went to Okinawa. We had somebody in the embassy. There was the new embassy is where obviously all the consular activities happen now, or not the consular activities, I should say. The consular activities happen in the old embassy, which was the embassy that Lone Tree was in, and it was over on the main street. That everybody that knows Russia and knows Moscow, when you say the U.S. embassy, they're talking about the old building. The new building was where we worked at, but all the consular affairs would happen over there. So we went over. We had somebody that was rummaging through the building, and the Marine security guard, we had to do nightly checks. And in those nightly checks, he opened the door and he heard somebody. He heard somebody in the shaft. And the way that...
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, so he actually... So he called the RSO, we got react, and we came over there. One of the coolest things about Moscow is they had this thing called the Sergeant of the Guard program, SOG program. And it's highly detailed. Like, I can't do it anymore because it's been so long, but in order for you to become the SOG, you kind of really have to be able to describe every single room in the embassy. This is what it looks like. There's a plant here. There's a light switch there. There's a fire alarm here. There's a fire extinguisher here. And because you got to know the environment you're operating in, right? So I knew that, and I came up there, and the RSO was like, all right, what do we got? And I was like, okay, the Marine said he heard this and this, and I said, hey, I recommend we go straight to the point of need because those hatches are locked. We've confirmed they're locked. You cannot get anywhere in the embassy through this shaft. So I recommended we go straight to the point. Let's go get this guy. And he said, no, you need to do a top-down search. I'm like, okay, copy. Top-down search it is. So we did the top-down search. By this time, the guy's long gone, right? Mm. So we didn't know who it was.
How'd he get out?
Yeah, so there was a tunnel that he used to infiltrate into the embassy, and then he came up. And the only way we knew that is because we have guys that, you know, do counter surveillance, and when they found out what had happened, they started working around the shaft, and they found the hole that he kind of crawled up in, and they said they crawled down the hole, and about 100 yards through the hole, they found a room that they popped up into, and in that room was a light and a chair, and what had looked like was stuff that was in the room before, like on the wall and stuff like that, but they had no idea because everything that they had done. So they surmised that it was most likely an espionage attempt, and they were trying to set up listening devices
in the shafts.
In the shafts and throughout the embassy. But I mean, but nothing happened in that building, which was so odd. It was like the only thing they do there is really handle visas. Like,
yeah, but do they know that?
I don't know. Maybe they did.
Like all
maybe
of a sudden,
didn't.
the State Department has another embassy building where they don't do consular affairs.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to know what's inside there.
Yeah. And I think, maybe that was their approach. Who knows, right? You could sit there and
know who was getting visas.
Yeah. That could have been it too, right? So I mean, there's all kinds of what ifs.
Yeah, there's a million different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's a chess match, right? So, but it was cool. It was like, wow, like this is real. Like this really happened, and I mean, I got to lead that. Like I was in charge of that.
And you were sergeant then?
I was a sergeant.
Yeah, that's badass.
Well,
were you staff sergeant?
I might have been. I got meritoriously promoted to staff sergeant out there, so I might have been a staff sergeant at the time. Yeah, so,
that's dope.
Yeah, that was a cool experience. I mean, you can't beat that, right? I went to Kuwait to get into the shit, and I get into the shit in Moscow. Who would have thought that, you know?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people would believe that now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Maybe then it would be like, no. But now I believe that.
Yeah.
What you know, everybody, all of my buddies or anybody I've ever come in contact with at MSG, they always have just such a good network coming out of there.
Yeah.
Is that is that on the person, or, you know, you got to make of it what you can? But I've heard that if you do a successful tour, you're going to come out knowing the right people to know all over the world.
Yeah. So I don't think it's the person. I think it's the environment. It's very closed. I mean, the people in the embassy are the only Americans you're seeing on a day-to-day basis,
okay,
right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, but you certainly have the opportunity. I mean, I had open job offers from every alphabet agency you could think of. The DEA was out there. The FBI was out there. Department of State, RSOs were out there doing diplomatic security. The CIA was out there. I think in a different life, I would have pursued more of my CIA contacts if I could probably go back and do it differently. But I didn't have a degree when I came off the program, and I was not about to leave the Marine Corps without a college degree. So that's the only reason I stayed in. Well, it's not the only reason. There's many reasons I stayed in, but I stayed in. But yeah, you absolutely have the ability to network. I think what's on the person is how you sell yourself to those people, right? And I remember RSO was talking to me like, okay, so are you ready to join us? Like, we want you. Like, you're the guy we want. And I'm like, yeah, but I got to have a degree. And they're like, yeah, go get a degree and then give us a call. And I mean, I had those open invites and open business cards. I just never took advantage of them because by the time I finished my degree, I was already in for 10 years. And what do they say? If you're over 10, you'd be silly to not retire. And I took it to heart. But I still loved my job. I love the organization. I wasn't ready. It wasn't time for me to move on. There's so much opportunity and I wasn't done, staying in the Marine Corps. So I stayed in.
Yeah. Well, so MSG I thought it was 3 duty stations. Is it only 2?
It is now.
Okay.
When I was out there, Colonel Rizzo was the commanding officer that took over MSG Battalion as I was coming off the program. And as I was coming off, he changed it to 3 12-month tours, vice 2, I think, what is it, 2 15-month? Yeah, it was like 15-month tours.
With a transition period.
Yeah. So he made it 3 tours. So that change happened as I was coming off the program in 2005. So, interesting thing though, right? So, and what happens in Kuwait, 9/11, and what happens in Moscow, we invaded Iraq. So we're watching all that from the news, and we all went to our deck commander and we're like, hey, how do we get to the fight? And he's like, look, he was an 0369, so he got it right. He was like, look, guys, I get it. He's like, but your job is here.
Yeah, you're not getting to the fight for a while.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I appreciate your heart and where you're at and that you want to fight with your brothers, but your job is here where there's nothing we can do to get you over to the fight. But we did ask. And I remember watching when they stormed Baghdad, we were watching that on the news up in the the dead office up there in the embassy. So it was cool. It kind of, some very major historical
what was the vibe like out in town?
I mean, it was, Russians they don't
care, huh?
Yeah, they didn't really care. They just didn't. I think in Kuwait they would have cared a lot more.
Oh yeah, it's a bigger deal.
In Kuwait we have Marine drivers. Marine drivers are local citizens that pass the background check and they're allowed to drive for us. So they drive us everywhere. I'm a grown man and my driver, I was probably 20, 21 years old. And I was 21 and the driver I had was almost in his 40s. And he says to me, he's crying, right? He's explaining. I asked him, hey, how did Kuwait, what was it like when Iraq came in here? Tears flowing down his face. He's like, I was so thankful when I saw the Marine Corps come through because that meant that I was going to get my life back. And it's just, when you grow up not being exposed to that, you're just like, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it again. It's like, wow, man,
Yeah.
like we really do matter to people everywhere in this world. It's important because, when you look internally, you think, why is the U.S. investing overseas? I couldn't think of a better reason than what that man had to say to me. And I was like, wow, we really are, in a sense, the world police because we provide opportunity for democracy. And that was so powerful to me at 21 years old to hear that and just see this man's reaction, not being afraid to cry in front of another man half his age about the impact that we had on his life whenever the U.S. showed up. And everybody knows what Marines look like when we have our sleeves rolled. So he was like, yeah, we knew who the Marines were, and that's why I wanted to come work with you guys. And I'm like, that's absolutely amazing. So
yeah, I think, not to get too far into a rabbit hole, but the shit that's going on now, I just don't think regular Americans understand. They don't understand war. They've been so sheltered from it and insulated from it because it's not here.
Yeah.
And now there's people that have been alive long, post 9/11 babies and post 9/11 Marines that like 90s, and I just don't think there's not that same almost patriotism or nationalistic pride that we had on 9/12, let's say. And that just fizzled out, and it's just, and then something like Abbey Gate and HKIA happens and everybody loses their minds. And it's like, no, that's what has been going on for 20 years.
Right.
22 years of war, that's what's been going on. You've just never seen it.
Yeah.
And now you look, you can basically watch the Hamas and Israel thing live on television right now, TikTok and Instagram and all these other things. And it's like people losing their minds. It's like, well,
I think what we're missing, not to go down this rabbit hole, but I think what we're probably missing is the national so what. Like, how does what's going on in Israel affect me as an average everyday Joe. And I think when you look back to World War II, everybody got it. Like, oh, we're trying to get freedom, right? And then obviously when 9/11 happened, okay, copy, 2 towers, 2 countries. Hey, I like to brag about that. Don't mean to brag, but they took 2 towers, we took 2 countries, I like to say, but not trying to minimize anything that happened to anybody in any of that stuff. But I think that people don't understand the second and third order effect of what we see. Are we on the cusp of World War III? I don't know.
I mean, it feels like it. I think. I mean, I don't want to get too crazy, but it almost appears as though the Axis and allies are just molding right now.
Yeah.
And then Hamas going after Israel, and then that Iran backed that, which now they've proved.
Yeah.
So it's all of these either enemies of our state or their proxies that are all molding right now.
Yep.
And then NATO, I believe it was the Supreme Allied Commander, our general, just called to the battle table, I think last month or 2 months ago, for the first time in years and years and years, and brought people in. And now we're activating the Gerald Ford and some of the 2.6 Mu with 1.6 on it.
Right.
And it's like, they're gonna fuck around and find out. You think the motherfucking United States wasn't waiting for you to get us in another one?
Yeah.
All the weapons and the money and the big green industrial machine. You think we didn't want that to happen?
Right.
At the top, I don't. But at the top levels, that's how we run a country. That's how we run the world.
Yeah.
Since World War I too.
Yeah.
All right, and it's like, then you're gonna launch an attack like that. With the rest of the chaos going on in the rest of the world, you're going to launch an attack like that on our number one little brother ally.
Yeah.
I think that's not going to get us?
Yeah, and I think, I'm just glad that our political leaders are behind Israel 100%.
Me too, but some of them, Some of them aren't.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And they're in Congress.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just.
I thought that was like Congress 101.
Yeah.
Understand the Israel-United States relationship,
yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong.
You got to honor your commitments. I think that's the perspective I'm taking to right. I mean, you're not going to get me to make a political comment here. That's certainly
no, and I don't either. I don't talk politics. I'm talking specifically about the actions that we're seeing unfold.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to me. The whole chaos of the world right now is just kind of wild.
It is. It's interesting to watch. Are we on the precipice of history? I think we are. Things are developing that are kind of make you scratch your head. And, when you see if-then statements and what's going on with Ukraine trying to join NATO and Russia's, their aggression and everything that's going on in the world, you're just kind of watching things fall. I'm hoping that nothing happens between China and Taiwan, but you never know. So, But,
I think it's just next.
Yeah,
actually, I thought it would have happened right after the Olympics, is what I said, and I was wrong. Thank God.
Yeah.
But that's what it felt like.
Yeah, I think if something happens there, then we're right into another World War scenario. I mean, that's my opinion.
What's crazy is hopefully it's not a nuclear war. But we're in a real bad location if it is.
Yeah.
Just saying. Yeah. Anybody next to a base is probably in bad trouble on either coast.
maybe I need to move. No, I'm just kidding.
No, maybe that's lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't want to make it through that first. Through into that apocalyptic status. Maybe I'll just be all set with that.
Right, exactly. So what's next? I don't know. After Moscow, I went back to Okinawa because I always heard that the best Marines went to Okinawa, so I wanted to experience that, and was not impressed. And that Okinawa is just not for me, right? I mean, there's people that love it out there. I did not. Made the best of it. And then after Okinawa, I actually went TAD to CENTCOM down in Tampa for 6 months. So it's
pretty wild down there with all those hitters.
Yeah. It was cool, though, because it got me out of when I went to Japan, the Marine Corps had just made the decision that it's going to be a 2-year minimum of 2 years. But I was a staff NCO. And they were like, okay, well, you're going to go single. We're only going to send you for a year. And I'm like, okay, but you don't know that I'm not married. But I'm not going to tell you that because you think I need 12-month orders. I'm not going to argue that. Mm-hmm. So I didn't. And
Smart, man.
6 months into the tour, I got, I was there for about 3 months, did a 6-month stint down in Tampa with CENTCOM, then 3 more months in Okinawa, and then I left. But I got thanked for my service and sent to 29 Palms. So
yeah.
But that place is it's very nostalgic. When you've been there in 29 Palms, yeah, it's hot there. Oddly enough, kind of one of the coolest duty stations I ever went to.
Really?
Right? Yeah, because everybody's tight knit. There's nothing to do out in town. You're 3 hours away from San Diego, three and a half hours away from LA, a couple hours away from not San Antonio. What am I talking about? San Diego.
San Diego.
But and then 4 hours away from Las Vegas. So you can. I mean, there's definitely things to do, and you're in the middle of nowhere. But who wants to drive for 3-4 hours to have fun? So the unit really stuck together, and I was like, that's what the most camaraderie I've ever felt.
And what unit? What was it up there?
It was Combat Logistics Battalion 7.
Okay.
So we used to call it Club 7, right? CLB 7.
CLB 7. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty tight knit group. We went, and that's when I got there. That's the first time I went to Iraq. I went to OIF with that unit. Stayed out there for a year. It was a 6-month deployment, 6-month rotation,
Yep.
and they asked for volunteers to stay. And I'm like, well, what's one desert over the other? I might as well get paid. So I stayed there for an entire year. Had a pretty good time staying in Iraq, and then
Where'd you stay at?
we were in Al Asad the whole time.
Okay.
So first 6 months I did. I just worked in the S4 doing logistics chief work, and then 2001 from 98 to 2001 I was a landing support specialist. Right. Then I went on Marine Security Guard duty. Came off Marine Security Guard duty. Went to Okinawa. Was a log chief. Went to CLB 7. Was an embarkation chief.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't done my job as a landing support specialist since 01.
Yeah.
Right. So here it is, and here I am in Iraq, halfway through, probably like January 2006. I finally went back to my job and was a platoon sergeant working at the airfield.
Nice.
Whenever CLB 1 came in to relieve us. So it was like, okay, finally back in the mix, right? And then I remember meeting people and like, who are you? Like, we don't even know you exist. And I'm like, yeah, because I didn't come up the way you came up. I was a Marine Security Guard and did log chief stuff. So I wasn't on the line platoons like the line companies. So kind of odd from that perspective. Ended up getting selected for gunny at the end of my tour in 29 Palms, but on the same time I was selected for gunny, I applied for warrant officer. And ironically, just like my platoon sergeant told me I didn't ask about the Marine Security Guard thing, same thing for warrant officer. I was talking to my captain. One day I wanted to be a sergeant major. The next day I wanted to be the commandant of the Marine Corps. The next day I wanted to be a warrant officer, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah. So this young captain sends me an email and he's like, hey, staff sergeant, this is coming up. Your warrant officer packages are due. I need it on my desk within the next 3 days. Hey, sir, copy, after further review, I'm going to go ahead and stick to MECEP. And he's like, okay, I didn't ask, right? So there's that recurring theme. And I'm like, okay, copy, sir. So I put it in and got selected for warrant officer on my first try. And so that's how I became an officer. Was I got selected for gunny, and then 2 weeks later the message came out for warrant officer. Got selected for warrant officer, and my first sergeant called me in and he's like, all right, this is what's going to happen. We need good staff NCOs. You're a damn good staff NCO. You're going to be a gunny. I need you to deny your promotion for warrant officer. I said, first sergeant, no way in hell am I going to do that. And he's like, all right, you passed the test. I appreciate that. Right. So, because he was like, if you would have told me that, then
your heart wasn't in the right spot.
Exactly. And that's what it was. And he goes, no, your heart's in the right spot. He goes, I don't want to lose you from the staff NCO ranks, but I respect the fact that you want to be a warrant officer. So go forth and do good things. And went to TBS after that, and then ended up going back out to Miramar, California with an MWSS as a brand new warrant officer. Did that for 3 years, and then went out to the waterfront in Japan, where I was a combat cargo officer, where I just helped the Navy understand how to load our stuff, where we need to load it at, help the Marines do amphibious operations, help them do their, execute their landing plan, stow the cargo, get the cargo prepped, and get it on the landing craft and get it off the ship. So that was a good time. And then after 3 years of that, ended up going to Marfor PAC, working on the G4 staff out there. Had the opportunity to work for Lieutenant General Berger, who obviously became General Berger and then was our most recent commandant. And then
he's a good guy.
Yeah, no, he's phenomenal. I had the opportunity to actually interact with him when he was the commandant, when he came down to Blunt Island Command, and it was just such a surreal, like. I just have a profound respect for people who keep it real, and he was not in love with what was on his collar. I asked him, I said, look, Commandant, you're making a lot of changes, right? You're getting rid of Tank Battalion. Are these changes enduring? I'm like, I got to believe that there's probably some of your, junior officers, junior generals that don't agree with your approach. So how do you handle that? And he was like, of course it's enduring, because if I didn't tell you that, you wouldn't accept that answer. He goes, so it has to be enduring. And he goes, and it was surprisingly, he told me, he's like, I don't get a lot of flack from the general officers. I get a lot of flack from the, what did he call it? From the past commandants. He goes, that's who really calls me, and that's who I have conversations with. I just thought it was so cool that he had no qualm being frank and honest with me. And I'm like, and I'm a major at the time. I was a major. I'm the button clicker, right? My boss is briefing him, who's a colonel, so I'm the button clicker, and he let anybody in the room ask him any questions, and I'm like, I'll jump on that. I'm not gonna,
shy away.
They always say, never hesitate to keep your mouth shut in front of a general officer, right? But I'm like, hey, how many times do you get to have a conversation with the commandant of the Marine Corps, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and so I asked him that, and it was really cool. And then I asked him, about, hey, being a logistician, the Army's trying to get rid of some of their watercraft programs and trying to have the Navy take that over, or the Marine Corps take that over. And he was like, look, at the end of the day, when the chiefs get together, the American people cannot afford two armies. Mm-hmm. So what we all do at the table is we all say, okay, look, that's your job. You got to do what you got to do. And at the end of the day, we all have a level head and we understand that. Mm-hmm. He's like, so that happens behind closed doors. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. They have just frank discussions, and it was really cool. And he was telling me, like, that's why he was making decisions he was making. He didn't need the Marine Corps to be the Second Army. And I'm just like, wow, that's just the level of wisdom. That's just blows my mind because I'm not exposed to it. Mm-hmm. So it was really cool to hear that, hey, there's a plan, there's a way forward, and he's not just, regardless of people's opinion, he's not just out there doing whatever he wants to do. There's a method to the madness, if you will.
Yeah, so. I agree. It took me interviewing a couple of different people and doing some research to understand, like, tanks going away and long-term artillery going away. But if you look at drones and drone warfare, how it has reshaped the battlefield, there's absolutely no doubt about it that a fleet of $2,000 drones with dumb bombs on them can come through and wipe your entire tank force out, and you can't really do anything about it.
Yeah.
Unless you have your own or you have counter drone, which I think there's some counter drone stuff out there right now, but it's not great because obviously everybody's still using them.
Yeah. Yeah.
When the day comes that counter drone is a thing and they can put them out of the sky just as quick as you can launch them, then we'll have to revert back to maybe some older ways, but I would say by then we have another workaround, right?
Yeah.
By the time that workaround comes, there'll be another workaround. And so a lot of people just didn't understand that because they didn't look into Azerbaijan and Armenia, and they didn't look into some of these other smaller conflicts where drones just absolutely decimated and changed the battlefield.
That's true.
But him and his staff were.
Yep.
And guess who wasn't? A bunch of these generals of the past, and it's nothing against them. I get it. Like I was mad about snipers. I was mad about different things. My buddies were not cool with some of these things.
Yeah.
But I think they're right.
Right.
And like the way I try to say it is like, do I want my 0317 friend who's a hog sniper going out and risking the fact that somebody else's drone picks him up and kills him when we can launch a Puma or an MQ-9 comes in and does all of the same stuff with rockets available?
Right.
And it's like, no, I want my friend to be safe. I know a lot of snipers are like chomping at the bit. Let me get out there, but
right. Well, I think that's just our nature.
Well, and we want them. They need to be that way. They need to be that way.
Yeah.
But some of these videos I'm seeing about the drone capabilities, like you're not even going to know it's there.
Right.
And they're everywhere now. It's not like we're the only ones that have them.
Yeah.
They're all over the battlefield now.
If you look at the recent Olympics that were in China, they had drones that were doing making pictures in the sky, right? So if you're seeing that they can coordinate, thousands of drones to do that.
Oh, they got that swarm shit
now.
The
swarm
technology where you control one in the entire group.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely. I think at the end of the day, right? It's a shift in how we fight battles.
Shift in the battlefield, 100%.
We're not using, it's no longer the battleship. It's now the aircraft carrier. That drones is the next wave.
I knew that swarm shit was coming when they did that last Jason Bourne movie, right? Because they used that shit, and I'm like, well, there's the movies. That shit's coming, or it's already here.
Yeah.
As soon as you see it in Hollywood, it's like that's just classical conditioning from the CIA in Hollywood. Like they're not going to understand if we don't condition them. A little bit of this, a little bit of this. 4 years later, swarm technology. I guess what they were really conditioning us with was Terminator, like in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, this is what's coming.
Well, you know, it's funny you mention that because, like, sometimes you kind of think about that when you look towards, you know, society moves more towards automation. You're like, wow, like, I mean, I drive a Tesla. Why do I drive a Tesla? Because the car drives me where I want to go.
I've seen iRobot. I don't want that.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good
Somebody
point.
else was driving his shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Funny thing, though, right? I talked about talking to the commandant. I've totally forgot about this story where I was in Kuwait and General Jones, when he was the commandant, came down to visit us. And he had breakfast with us in the Marine House. And at the time, General Pace was another Marine general was the Joint Chiefs of Staff, right? So I remember all of us were laughing before we met. Hey, who do you think takes out the trash, right? Like, if they're like, we don't know. We'd never been to headquarters of Marine Corps. We didn't know if these guys actually work next to each other. You know, they're on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I remember, you know, we're all looking at each other and like, who has the balls to ask him, right? And then, of course, here I am. And the general looks at everybody. He's like, okay, what's wrong, guys? I could tell something's on your mind. I'm like, all right, General, I've got it. You and General Pace are in the Pentagon. It's, you know, after hours and the trash wasn't taken out. I was like, who takes out the trash? Is it you or General Pace? And he looks at everybody and he says, well, you know, we're general officers. We don't really delve into that. He goes, but I am the commandant of the Marine Corps. I was like, well said, General.
Roger.
Yeah.
Solid copy.
Yeah, it was a good answer. I was like, that's perfect. So, yeah.
So in the interest of time, I got to move forward.
Yeah, let's do it.
You're coming up on your retirement date.
Yep.
You're not ashamed of that. You're ready for that.
Yeah.
Enough's enough. And when you know, you said in the beginning when we were
Yeah.
offline, or maybe we were online. I want you to talk about what your plans are as far as your FFL, what you have coming, and what your plans are as you exit and transition. You're one of the few people that I've talked to recently that had such a good plan in my eyes, as far as having something that you're working on a year out to 18 months out, like to cultivate for the next year and a half to be ready. And I just want to delve into that and then let people know where they can get further acquainted with your services.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that opportunity. I think when you they always tell you when it's time, you'll know, right? And it's time for me because I'm old. My body's broken. I'm getting knee surgery here next month. Might be coming up for some back surgery. I'm getting to the point to where I can't be as physical as I wanted to be. And as a leader of Marines, I need to be physical. So, right, that's part of it as well, right? But then the other part of it is hey, I'm mentally ready to move on to the next challenge in life. And how can I continue to give 110% to an organization when mentally I know I'm ready, right? Now, I'm not dropping my pack by any means. I still come in and earn my paycheck that I get every 2 weeks. But so to me, it's time. And I think that when you're making your transition, you got to find out what's important to you. And what I decided is important to me is my time. And I said, okay, how can I best own my time? I don't want to be lazy, but how can I own my time? So a couple years ago, I actually started when I thought I was going to retire a few years ago before I got selected for promotion. I started Allen Consulting Group. It's a consulting firm that's out there. I'm not taking it. I have not done anything with it yet, but it's in existence, and I want to start bidding on government contracts and providing professional services to the government, right?
Sure.
That's out there. And then I also, when we start talking about the FFL, I've contemplated opening a firearms business for a while. You know, talking to my buddy about firearms who worked for a gun shop, and he was like, yeah, you got to have an FFL. And, you know, part of it is like, hey, I can get, you certainly, if you're an FFL, you get guns on the cheap because you're paying distributor prices, right? So I'm like, oh, that'd be a good way to build my personal, stock and inventory. But I'm like, yeah, you know, that's not what it's all about. It's about what I can do for the average person, right? For the people. So I ended up starting Allen Arms, and it got my federal firearms license approved. And my motivation is right on the website. It says, you know, for the people, right? I started this business because I want to give everyday people the opportunity to get high quality firearms at a decent cost, at a cost effective price. I'm not knocking anybody out there that's in the firearms industry, but I don't have a brick and mortar store, so I don't have to pay brick and mortar store costs. I don't have employees to pay. I'm a one man show. I'm running it out of my home. And I can offer more competitive pricing than a lot of the people out there on the market because of that, right? So and that's my niche. Is it's like my motivation for doing this is really so I can give you a gun, a high quality gun at a fair price. And I don't define high quality as a name, right? To me, quality is I'm giving you what you want. That's what quality is. So if you want a budget friendly firearm, that's high quality in my mind. Don't think that I'm only going to sell you a high end firearm to make the most money I can. My profit margins are very slim. I've got to make some money to keep the business alive, and that's what I do. That's kind of some of this transition is like, okay, hey, let's get a couple of side gigs going and let's see what can develop. Yeah. And I think that as I look at owning my time, to me, being an entrepreneur allows me to own my time because that business represents who you are as an individual.
Fact.
Everything that you put in that business is who you are. What kind of drive do you have? Is it successful? How do you want to market yourself to the public? What does that look like? You're making all those independent decisions. And to me, that's more powerful than staying in an industry and working for somebody else. Now, that is part of my plan, right? Because I think that I am going to have to I'm bootstrapping my businesses. So bootstrapping means that I'm self-funding. I'm not going to go out and get any type of credit. I'm not going to go out and look for a small business loan. I'm going to fund everything on my own. So because that's my approach, they're going to be side gigs until I can really get it off the ground and running. So I think I am going to have to go out and get another job. But I'm looking for things that are remote. I'm looking for like a work from home type job that I can continue to do something in the logistics field. Make it a decent amount of money and couple that with my retirement and then kind of supporting my business ventures as I continue to move forward. So, and I think that when you talk about transitioning, it's a plan, right? We learned that in the Marine Corps. And I remember the best conversation I ever had with a young Marine that was getting out. I said, "What's your plan?" He says, "Sir, my plan is to go to school." I'm like, "Okay, what does that look like?" "Well, I'm going to get out on a Friday and go to school on a Monday." And I'm like, "No, that's not how that works, brother. You need to have a plan." Mm-hmm. So I sat him down, helped him understand how to apply to colleges, and made him. I told him, I'm like, "You're not leaving today until you apply." Did it cost money? Yeah, it did. But if he was serious about going to school, he didn't mind. So I made him apply. He wanted to go to Texas Tech University in Texas. I made him apply to University of Houston, Texas Tech. He applied to, I think, Texas A&M and the University of Texas. Got accepted to all four schools. And he ended up going to Texas Tech. And he's a college graduate to this day. And it's because it was like, hey, I taught him, hey, you have to have a plan. So anything you transition in life, you just got to visualize where you want to be and find out what it takes to get there. Mm-hmm. And the sky's the limit. You mentioned it earlier when we were talking. You can do anything you want. The sky's the absolute limit. The only thing holding you back is yourself. I firmly believe that. So.
Yeah, agreed. And so, if you want, why don't you pick up and show us what you brought for the show, and I'll talk about what the show is going to do with it. This is going to be an extremely generous donation that's going to go to the show, just like our last donated rifle. We're going to raffle this rifle off, or this pistol off rather, as well, very much in the same fashion. And I'm gonna let you kick it and tell about what it is and model and specs.
At Heckler & Koch, it's a VP9B, and the B just means that there's a push-button release on the magazine release. This typical model has if you just get the VP9, it has a little magazine release that's under the oh, are we getting it? Yeah,
you're getting it.
That's under the trigger frame, and a lot of people don't like that. It's a European thing, right? Not discounting them, but Heckler & Koch comes from their German-based company, so. But it has the push button here, which I think we're used to here in America. It is ambidextrous. It can be changed around, so it can swap on different side if you're a wrong-handed shooter. Right. So, yeah. But 9mm, 17 rounds. It's got 2 magazines with it. It is the OD green. I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of a unique individual, but I prefer that look. It does not have a safety on it. Right. The safety is. We'll go ahead and clear it here, but the safety of it is actually on the trigger itself. So as you're pulling the trigger, that's your safety. Great weapon. I mean, it fits in your hand just so snug. Like I really don't want to give it to you. I want to keep it for myself, right? But no, we'll definitely let some lucky listener out there have the opportunity to win it. And I think it's a great pistol all around together. H&K. It does have the optics ready slide rail. So if you want to put optics on it, you certainly can. And it's also got the night sights on it. So if you're shooting at night or at low light visibility, you can certainly see that front sight post very well because it is illuminated. Excuse me. So But yeah, 2 17-round magazines. It does come with back straps, so you can change out your hand grips if you got big hands or small hands or however you want to do it. Excuse me. But yeah, great weapon overall, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do with it. I think you want to shoot it for a while.
Yeah,
I'm just
going to test it, not for a while. I'm just going to test it out just to make sure that I'm not raffling off a gun that has some kind of faulty mechanism. I'll do a little video to show you guys that it fires well, and then we're going to put it up for raffle just like we've had in the past, and we're let it go to a lucky listener, like you said, and then all the money that's raised from the raffle. Look, everybody likes a $20 gun. This one's a $20, $700, $800 gun. It's a good deal. You're gonna get after it. So no limits on the tickets. We'll put the instructions and such below this video, and I hope you guys take it for real.
No, a good point though. I think the market price on this one is about $750. You can get it from Allen Arms for $650.
There you go.
So right off the bat, you see I'm already $100 lower than the market. And I just make that point because that goes with the mantra of the business for the people, right? That's for someone to come in here and needs a firearm and wants a decent firearm and wants a good name, and I'm going to give it to you at a price that's probably a little bit better than the brick and mortar store. Sure. And I'm not discounting what the brick and mortars do. I'm not here to do that. I'm not going to incite a battle between the two of us. I'm offering a product and a service at a good price because I can. I don't have the overhead that some of these other places do. So where can people find you? If somebody wants to get on Allen Arms website right now and take advantage, like I'm going to, of a $650 H&K VP9, where do they go? Yeah, so www.allenarmsnc, that's NovemberCharlie.com. So it stands for North Carolina. I wanted it to be something relatively easy, but www.allenarmsnc.com. The website is under construction, and what I'm doing on the website is I'm mapping out all of the products that I can get. I can get any firearms that anybody wants. So if you don't see it on the website, reach out to me and ask me. I'll let you know what I can get it to you for. I have about 4 or 5 different distributors that I'm working with, so I can get my hands on any firearms that you want, with the exception of Colt and Canic, because I'm not a stocking dealer, right? So that's the only catch. I'm not a brick and mortar. If you want certain types of weapons, they're only going to sell to brick and mortar stores. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to be able to get Colt and Canic, and then I'm trying to work with Loophole to get some of their optics, but the same thing, they want to see that there's a brick and mortar store, and then you've got a certain number of products on the shelf before they're going to allow me to be a dealer for those products. So that's the only drawback. But I can get any weapon you want for the most part. Give me a call if you don't see it on the website. Why am I doing a website? Because that's what people are used to, right? And when I started talking and just advertising via word of mouth, the number one question I kept getting was, "Where's the website?" Yep. And I'm like, okay. It's because you want to look at product and you want to see prices. You want to do some window shopping, and I respect that. So
cool.
That's what I'm doing on the website. I'm building it up. I'm mapping out. I've got Glock fully mapped out. I'm working on Springfield Armory right now, so you can certainly see the prices that I offer based on what I've already mapped out. And then if there's anything you don't see, I do have a contact us page. Just you can utilize that. Send me a quick email. Tell me what you're looking for, and I'll give you some feedback on what the price would be if you picked it up from Allen Arms.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I love it. I
appreciate
any parting shots from for the business or for the podcast?
I think you got some great listeners, and I just appreciate the opportunity to address them today. Think I'm thankful for that opportunity. I think it's important. As we move forward here, when we first met, saw an opportunity to work with you. And I think it's great that the one thing I think that we need to capitalize on, if you haven't done so already in your past shows, is you're getting a great weapon system to raffle off, and that's going to go right back into the business altogether, right? Yep. This is something that's going to help you continue to expand forward, and I think it's important for people to understand that. I think as a local business supporting local efforts and working together, I just want to capitalize on that, right? It's not we're not doing this for a profit. I'm not doing this because I've got some secret handshake deal with you behind the scenes and I'm going to get so much money out of it. This is an investment that I've invested in my company, and I recognize the ability to kind of get it out there for everybody and your listeners. And I mean, H&K is a great weapon system. And I think a lucky listener is going to be very, very glad to have this weapon system in their possession one day. So,
100%.
yeah, and then just looking forward to keep a relationship going with you. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that's all that matters. And I care about the person. That's what it's about. It's for the people. You'll see it on the website right there, big bold letters. It explains why I exist, and that's why I wanted to get the FFL. I wanted to help people get what they want at a fair price.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel like they're getting taken advantage of by going somewhere else. So
Sure.
the website's there. Look at the prices. If you agree with them, give me a call. Let's work.
Yeah, let's get after it. All right, guys. I think that about wraps it up for today's episodes. But remember, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, smash that like and that follow button, and make sure you hit those bells so you get the notifications when new content comes out on the platform. So until next time, choices, not chances, guys.
Well, that concludes this episode. Thanks for listening to Choices Not Chances podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch our podcast. You can also follow us on social media at Choices Not Chances podcast. Thanks, and have a great day.
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters, specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger. We have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunShop.com.
Not too far. You're marking a building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good. That's a good shot. That's money. Yeah.